Up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, why getting back to explosive in the passing game starts with the ground game and a novel idea to help both.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you once again. And on today's episode, a salute to the working man's kind of QB. Thoughts from offensive coordinator Mac Leftwich on Mitch Griffith, who we saw carry a big pail of water over the weekend and may not have seen him for the final time, obviously, given how we know these things can develop. So I want to get into a little bit of the background as to how that relationship came to be and what he actually is as a QB. We talked about that some on Friday, but we'll hear from the OC on that as well. Coming up in just a moment. Also want to hear not only from the OC, but again from the head coach, Joey McGuire, talking about how to get the ground game back on track, and not just related specifically to the ground game, but of course what that can lead to as well in trying to get back into the realm of explosive offensive plays. But to kick off the conversation, Chris, I want to get to a thought from Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire, because this is what it's all about. It's going to be November. It's going to be on the road. It's going to be against Kansas State. This is the type of team you are building yourself into being in order to be able to compete and be successful in just these types of situations. Are we there yet? We're going to find out a lot more on Saturday, but let's take a listen to Coach McGuire talking about exactly what kind of game this is going to be and, of course, what we have come to expect whenever Kansas State is on the other sideline.
I do think they have a really strong culture. I mean, that's, Kleiman, that's been his calling card throughout his career. You know, they're a hard-nosed football team. They've got one of the best receivers that will be drafted this year, number one. They've got a legitimate dual-threat quarterback. They're playing better on defense. You look at them, too, the one thing they are doing that we've got to do a great job of is we got to take care of the football. I think they're number 3 in the country, +9 in the turnover margin. That's been huge. That was a huge part of the win last week against Kansas. I think there was 21 points that were scored off of turnovers. So we got to do a good job. But it doesn't surprise me. I mean, they're a team that you think about it, like we didn't have a media poll this year, but if we would have had a media poll this year, they would have been one of the picks by a lot of people to win the Big 12. And just had sometimes the ball hadn't bounced their way, but it's bouncing their way right now. Better have your team prepared, and you better understand there's going to be highs in the game, there's going to be lows in the game. I'm a huge UFC fan, I'm a huge boxing fan, and one of my favorite rounds ever is Ward Gotti. The 9th round is probably the greatest round. If you've never seen it, go back. You can Google it, Ward Gotti, and I'm showing it to the team tomorrow. That's what the game's going to be like. It's going to be body blows. It is going to be a dirty, just fight for 4 quarters, and that's what we expect, and we've got to prepare ourselves for it.
Love that comparison, Chris. And I know that if you want to compete for hardware, you've got to be the kind of team that can be successful in these situations. Historically, over the last decade plus, you haven't. So we're going to learn a lot more about how close you are to that team in just a few days.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you want to go to where you haven't been before, you're going to have to go do things that you haven't really done, and this is kind of one of them. This has just been a bugaboo of sorts for a variety of different reasons, but it wouldn't have mattered that it just happens to be Kansas State. There would have been a time where you were going to have to go on the road late in the season and you may still have to do it again with like a trip to Morgantown, and a tricky game there if you set yourself up. But this one was always a game that you and I talked about, and I do think that they were probably picked because there wasn't a Big 12 media poll or a coaches poll or whatever, but a variety of media did pick them to win it. And based on what Joey McGuire's talking about, the culture, and they didn't have the kind of year that they wanted to last year. And so they thought they'd bounce back and all the stuff, and that they've just kind of regularly been a consistent force in this league. And you didn't play them last year, so you didn't have to deal with it. Lucky you when they kind of struggled a bit. It's like, but yeah, now you're getting them when they're kind of figuring it out. And I heard Chris Kleiman say yesterday that he thought Avery Johnson played his best game of his Kansas State career, against Kansas. And maybe he didn't clarify. It was either career or this season. But either way, the point still stands is that, of course. Of course that's what's happening.
Right on time.
Yeah. Do you remember? Let me just ask you. Do you remember the last time you were there in Manhattan? Like not you personally, but the was.
No, I've tried to wipe all those memories out of my mind. But was there some missed late game opportunity? Was it one of those that made you feel close, but then you weren't?
It's just funny how the sport changes. This was a Donovan Smith going against Adrian Martinez game,
of course,
in 2002.
And which ones were our quarterback?
Exactly. But two common themes came up, because the last time you saw Avery Johnson was in Lubbock, and he comes off the bench, I think, for Martinez, and then he just went crazy
to the end zone.
Yeah, 5 times. But they ran it against you for 373 yards that day. And then you also turned the ball over 4 times to their 1. And yet, as I'm looking at it, you still only lost by 9. Okay? But there's some common themes when you play these guys or play up there that just kind of pop up. And the turnover and the giving up yards on the ground, especially to a QB, there's some, regardless of what year it is or who's coaching or what you've got at quarterback, there's just some common themes between these two teams that they have been able to have your number over the last, decade, I guess it is.
I may be a little late in actually asking, are you built for this? And maybe we've already sort of got an answer, even though this is a much different construction than last season. But Chris, what I'm really talking about being built for is late in the year, maybe some adverse weather, you're on the road, right. You're against a physical, tough football team, and you passed one of those tests recently against Iowa State, who's probably a better team at that time than what K-State has been to this point in the season. So you've had some success in the McGuire era in this type of situation. I don't want to act like it's totally foreign, but we all know it's about the trenches to begin with, and defensively buying into it entirely that, yes, you are built for this. Offensively, you've made progress in that direction, but that's something I wanted to get to with you as well, Chris, is sort of the assessment where you've been up front offensively, obviously how that's reflected in the ground game, but something else you'll hear here from Joey McGuire and offensive coordinator Mac Leftwich. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet only $5, and if your bet hits, you're getting $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. Any way you like it, FanDuel has you covered, and it's quick, easy, and secure every time. Ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Something else you'll hear here from Joey McGuire and offensive coordinator Mac Leftwich. Kind of interesting to me because there have been a lot of folks out there asking about how are we going to get back to some explosive plays in the passing game and getting back down the field. And it sort of sounds like that answer might begin somewhat with get back to running the football. Take a listen.
2 weeks ago, we were really dominant coming off the ball in the run game against Kansas, and then I think we took a step back these last 2 weeks. Yesterday, whenever we went through the plan to win, the one part that we did not win, our second one is dominate up front, and they had more rushing yards than we did. I mean, we've got to be able to run the football. I mean, that takes the pressure off of everybody, and we got to find good runs with the running backs, and this is going to be a big part of the game plan this week of finding their right runs against this defense and being able to execute them.
I think when you don't run the ball successfully, it's a combination of things. It's, probably a little bit we got to do a better job as coaches scheming up the run plays, and then, the actual execution. And it's a combination of, kind of it was one of those days where the times that they would block it up well, the quarterback threw the RPO, or, the O-line would block it up well and the running back maybe didn't hit it the right way. And so there's so much, the times that we did have a play called, that should have been successful, maybe they didn't block it up as well as, as they should have. And so it was a little bit of a combination, kind of all those things. So just getting back to the basics and being really clean in our fundamentals, and making sure we're putting our guys in a position to be successful to run the football, and then going out in there and execution. The execution and the physicality is going to be at a premium this week for sure. The games that we've been successful, I think when we've really been in rhythm on the offense, we've been able to do both. You've got to be able to establish the run, and then I think that does open up, some of those explosive passes. I think when you're not able to run the football, one, it's hard to stay ahead of the chains and it's hard to stay on schedule, and play in rhythm on offense. So, you would like to see the running game get back going this week for sure, which will be a challenge because Kansas State's good.
There's a level of regression or it all not working well in the last couple of weeks. I think we've all seen it. We've all wondered aloud about it. And whatever the reasoning is, Jacoby's ankle, the setting, the playing surface, the other team, deciding to throw it instead of running it right there in an RPO where it's just a bang bang scenario, whatever. It just hasn't looked like it needed to in the last couple of weeks compared to when you saw them versus Kansas, when it's just like so you need to come away from this game basically being Kansas State champs. I should say state of Kansas champs.
Right,
that's the last time you look good against these guys, but because that night it just seemed like you played motivated and angry, and but I want some of that, playing with a purpose, and I think we'll have to see what it looks like with Will Jados as we go along this week. I think that's a fair question to wonder aloud about, but
yeah. And how many? Refresh my memory, Chris. How many are we including that could be part of a shuffle if he's not in the mix? I think we were talking 2 or 3 guys. 2 guys.
If Jados isn't in the mix,
yeah, it's not just a plug and play with somebody else, is it? Or would there be more of a shuffle?
Okay, so here's what it does to you. So say he's not available or he has to come out, whatever. Cash Cleveland, my thought would be that's who plays left guard. But what Jados also is your third offensive tackle. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if something were to have happened with Howard or Ponton, Jados would come in and fill in on either side, and you move those guys around, and then Cleveland would come in to fill in it with Jados. So the real question is now, okay, now who's your backup interior guy? Now if Cleveland is in there, and now who's your backup tackle? Because Jados was kind of this, yeah. So
and one of the backup tackles is our starting center, correct? I thought we had mentioned that at one point in time.
Well, I think it's kind of changed over the, because I think Hunter Zambrano, I think that he's staring at a red shirt. Yeah. I mean, he's been out for a variety of weeks. I think that he hasn't played but 3 or 4 games, and that's something we talked about on the radio broadcast over the weekend, because he wasn't even suited up, and because he would have been a backup at tackle. You still got Vinny Scurry around. You've got Daniel Sill around. Holton Hendricks is back. Connor Carty and Deanthus Upshaw are just younger and inexperienced, but I don't know. But I think I'm as curious as you are on one. Will Jados play, and then 2, if he, because it just leads to one question leads to a variety of other questions, or one answer writes to another, series of questions, I should say. So, yeah, but that you just are gonna have to, just to help Barron. I mean, I just feel like you if not, I feel like you may see the same movie like you saw at Arizona State, where it feels like there's 13 guys out there. The crowd's going to feel like they're on top of you and going to be loud, and just the whole thing. So there's just got to be a level of grit your teeth, and we are running the ball today. There is no plan B. Damn it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. But, okay. Can I ask you about this sort of different approach than what you described there when you're talking about needing to help out Barron? Because there's been a ton of conversation. I know I've been texting with mobsters all day, all night. My wife is asking me, begging me, spend some time with the children, get some sleep, eat a meal. I said, no, this is late October, early November football we're talking here. I got to visit with the mob. Just a ton of conversation, Chris, about the fact that for whatever reason, it seems like maybe Hammond and or Griffiths were unable to punish an opposing defense for stacking or loading a box, whereas there's some thought that Morton might be able to do that. So I'm kind of wondering, in a different route, is it Morton that's actually more so going to help the ground game by being back on the field? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what I think Barron is good at, and this is what people, when they're watching these games, myself included, and you too, we don't really have a grasp of it until it's over with, and you kind of get a feel from talking to people or listening to how that, whatever, like a quarterback's ability to manage or manipulate a game from the standpoint of, is he putting the team in the right play? Is he checking in, checking out? Is he on the RPO stuff? Is he giving? Is he throwing? Did he make the right choice? Is he attacking the right read because of what he can see pre-snap? All these things, and I think that's where Barron's experience can certainly come into play. I think he's well studied, and I think that some of what you're talking about plays into that there. It's not like any of them are perfect. And sometimes it's like, I guessed wrong, or no, that wasn't a check. That's just a bad read, whatever. But I think that's kind of what you're talking about, in my opinion.
I think so. And I'm buying into it a little bit. Of course, I'm just looking for reasons to believe you can get the ground game back on track, but maybe it's not so appetizing for a defense to creep toward the line of scrimmage if you've got, get this, the starting quarterback playing. I like the idea. Let's try it out this Saturday. QB1 back on the field, I think could be exciting. Chris, before we wrap it up today, let's take a trip to the other end of the depth chart, which all of a sudden became like the forefront of the depth chart on Saturday against Oklahoma State. Mitch Griffith, a man whose name was called several times on Saturday, well beyond just the garbage time kind of dreams that we were thinking about. It may have been garbage time because of the score, but obviously, you know the story with Will Hammond exiting the game, exiting the season with an ACL injury, and Griffiths' name being called the working man's kind of QB. Let's take a listen to his offensive coordinator, Mac Leftwich, talking about what he sees in Mitch, what he likes about him as a QB, and, of course, how this relationship came to be, and maybe because you didn't know a little. First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly feel the call of the stadium. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. And with the money you save on tickets, you can then splurge on foods, drinks, gear, and more. Gametime makes it all possible. And best of all, Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get the first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. And if you're like me, you get tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal, and that's why Gametime's Zone Deals is the go-to move, since it automatically picks the best seats in your section for you at the best price. And as always, you can get a view from your seat right there in the app, so before you buy, you know exactly what you're going to see. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. A little bit more difficult to imagine it a year ago as Mitch had, well, sort of a regular blue-collar job. Take a listen.
And what I like about his game is the moment wasn't too big, and he's kind of got a little freelance. He's not out there, uptight like he was ready to cut it loose. And at the end, I think you saw in some of those moments like he wasn't afraid to push the ball down the field and really and let it rip. So I appreciated his mindset, and he's a really talented kid. I mean, that's what you watch him in practice. He can really spin the football. He's not a big guy, but for his stature, has a lot of arm talent, and has some magic too with his ability to scramble and escape and extend plays. Which he didn't necessarily have to do a ton of, but you kind of saw he had that rep, at the end of the first half where he kind of scrambled out to the right and threw it to CD. So you could see kind of his improvisation, at play. So he's got all those things that you look for, and then just being an older guy, he does have some really good leadership qualities. I thought he did a really nice job on the sidelines with the offense. Just talking through those guys in between drives and kind of rallying the troops. So I thought he did a phenomenal job there. It's kind of a crazy story how we ended up with him. This time he sent a picture in our quarterback, group chat last week last Tuesday of last week. A year prior he was, working pouring concrete. And so, took the year off from football, and we were just in a kind of a unique position where we had a starter. We had a backup that we felt really good about in Will, and so we were looking for a guy, who had some experience that could come in and kind of provide a veteran presence that if you did have to play with, had the talent and experience, to win you a game, which he did. And he just ended up being the perfect fit. He wasn't looking for much. He was kind of just, coming from where he was at. He was just looking for another opportunity to get back into things. And I had a prior relationship with him from recruiting him a little bit when he was in the portal the first time when I was at my previous school. So kind of knew of him and just saw him post on Twitter that he was interested in getting back to playing football, and it all kind of worked out to get him here.
And all of a sudden the lights are bright and your team needs you on a Saturday night, man. No big deal, right?
Well, and the thing about, do you remember Joey's very first press conference here? Like when he got the job? Okay. And he had a big part of the speech where it was like, I don't have to, I get to. Okay. And he filled in the blanks on a lot of these things. Like, I don't have to go to work. I get to go to work and all that stuff. That's what I think Mitch Griffith is treating this like. Like, this isn't oh, dude, I got another practice. No, man, I can't wait for it. I'm running to this. I'm so appreciative. Again, this wasn't, we touched on this, but this wasn't some big NIL deal. This wasn't some, but you know the irony here. The irony here is that you went into the season thinking that you have Baron Morton as the starter, Will Hammond as the backup, and then back when you're deciding, man, do we need another guy? You want to know why you had to get Mitch Griffith? Because your true freshman quarterback was going to be very delayed in getting healthy and cleared because of an ACL injury.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, it's like a whole full circle thing. So, Mitch Griffith is technically here because he was really going to be a step up and a more experienced and older version to cover for Chubb Jones, when now he's going to really cover for Will Hammond, maybe for a year and a half of the 2 years that he's here. But Mitch he's just kind of the two. There's a little Baker Mayfield there. There's a little, chip on the shoulder, just like, I dare you to tell me I can't. That he's got going on. And anyway, but he's now your backup for the remainder of this season. And, we'll see what it looks like next year. But yeah, it's just, the whole thing is certainly interesting, but it was a hell of an ad. And as Joey said yesterday, there's a lot of teams out there that wish they had a Mitch Griffith on their team right now, and I bet that is indeed accurate.
No doubt. Love the story, and love to hear from Mitch following the game on Saturday about his path to Lubbock. And I'm kind of curious, just before we get out of here really quickly. I mean, I know that when it was a Morton Hammond QB depth chart, we were still seeing Hammond in some special situations, red zone or kind of near the goal line as a ball carrier. I know that's not going to be the case with Griffiths, but I'm wondering if that leads to more, like we talked about, I guess, on our reaction episode on Sunday, maybe some more abnormal looks or atypical looks with a Terrence Carter or a direct snap to a running back or maybe whatever you can imagine, I guess, because I don't think that wrinkle or something different is going to necessarily leave the bag of Mac Leftwich in those situations.
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me this. I don't know. I don't know if you're comfortable there letting Mitch handle it in those, knowing that he's again a much more important insurance policy. And is he as good at that as Will Hammond was with the power? I mean, he's not quite as big. And well, good question. You've showed the Cam Dickey Wildcat stuff a bit. I had thought back in August and even early September, I thought Roy Alexander would be featured in this, but I think he's not going to be a part of this thing the rest of the year. It doesn't appear. We certainly haven't seen him in a month plus, and I don't think there's any sign there of that being any different. So that's a good question. I really, maybe. But I don't know. I don't feel near as strongly about this as a possibility as I did before. But here's the thing. You do need something in your back pocket to show a different look, or I don't know. Hand it to Lee Hunter.
Screen pass to Lee Hunter, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, Alabama's doing it with Caden Proctor. Yeah. I'd like to see my version of that if we could. But I just don't know. I don't know which skill player other than Cam or Jacoby that you would go, let's wildcat it. Let's do the thing. I don't know. So I mean, maybe it is in that family, but I mean, I wouldn't totally rule out Mitch Griffiths coming in and, with a little QB run game or like a fake to run it and then the throw and all that stuff. But I mean, you just don't have, I don't feel like you have as many possibilities there as you once did because of injuries and the like. But
I still feel like you've got some versatility in some guys that can give it a different wrinkle, if you will. And it's not exactly like having a QB or Hammond there, but
because man, I mean, think about it. It is, excuse my language here, but this is nut cutting time here. And you the next time you see a scenario where you're like really wondering about some sort of red zone or goal line situation, it could be a scenario where we talk about this call for years to come because you were just right there and this is what you want. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So like, what do you want to go with?
Yep.
Like, what do you want to live with? If you just, I mean, we gotta have it. I mean, what's the bread and butter? And I don't know, all of that. It's a bit stressful to kind of think about it in those terms, but this is the reality of what you're walking into here over the next couple of weeks, at least.
Whether it is a Carter, Jacoby, Cameron, Coy Aiken, I don't know. I mean, you can imagine a lot of different things maybe we could see, but I think the wrinkle will still be there. Because like you said, you're definitely not wanting to like condense anything or hold nothing back now. Word to Dan Fouts, right? And yes, you were literally correct. Nut cutting time upon us. Worked, I don't know how many calves on Friday, Chris. Were you spying on me? And we cut no corners. I'll tell you that. Okay. Thank you, Chris, for the time. Enjoyed the conversation as always, my man. And plenty more to come this week as we get ready for the biggest game until the next one. And hopefully, like we talked about, with a win, earning a right for an even bigger one to follow. So looking forward to it, man. We'll see you for the next one.
We love you all. We will talk to you next time. And it's getting pretty serious around here. And basketball season next week too, man. So this is when we really just start keeping our heads on a swivel. It's just a lot going on. My favorite time of year, kind of.
You want to fill off another 30 for hoops real quick? Another hour? I don't think the wife's expecting me for Okay, maybe for another episode. We'll get back to that. November 4th, everybody. It's going down for real at United Supermarkets Arena. Looking forward to that as well. Fun time of year, maybe the best time of year, and hopefully keeping the fun times rolling this weekend in Manhattan, Kansas. Get subscribed on YouTube, anywhere you get podcasts, so you never miss an episode. Thanks to the Everydayers for always riding along. And, of course, shout out to the Matador Mob. Hit our show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial if you're interested in joining that crew. Your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. And also your kickoff time, frustration, ventilation hotline, as I've learned this week. Thank you so much for all the thoughts. For Chris, I'm Casey, and thank you for the time. We hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.